So, good morning or good evening, everyone, based on where you are based. It's great to have you here and experimenting in this difficult time, in a way. Um, Reason for being here is to exchange ideas and indeed keep experimenting to see how potentially VR and other medium could help us really to be productive at a distance and also keep sharing ideas in a way that is effective and interactive indeed. So everybody here comes from different part of the world, so maybe what we can do is first go into a quick round of introduction, and then we'll have a chat, asking question and follow up between each other to really share what's the current situation, current feeling about the market, and these new opportunities that might be opening up for the months to come for such a breakthrough technology like XR. So maybe David, why don't you start first?
Yeah, well, David here. I work in virtual in Spain. So we are suffering a great situation here with the coronavirus right now. And happy to be here. And thanks for having me, Gabriel.
Hi,
Andre.
I'm Andre. Well, I wear multiple hats. Recently, most of the time, I've been doing industry analytics for XR base in Amsterdam. But this crisis made me put on back my very old and forgotten almost the head of being entrepreneur in the retail business, because I need to handle some issues on my old legacy business. And also, but on the other hand, we launched this initiative, Embrace Online XR, which is exploring actually the opportunities of virtual reality for conferencing and events. And basically, yeah, this is how we get to zero event with Alina.
So Alina, then you can take it on, I suppose.
Yes. Hello, and thank you for having me in this very interesting format. My name is Alina. I'm a founder of the company called Blast Media Group, and I've been in virtual reality for about 5 years. I was the co-founder of the VR studio called Spherica, and mostly involved in various kinds of 360 VR productions, and now launching a new company that is aimed at building valuable connections with the audience. And of course, what we are experiencing right now is definitely part of what I've been thinking for a long time.
And Kalle, I mean, you are the homeowner here, so why don't you tell us about you?
So hi, Kalle Sargans. I'm from Glue. Not an entrepreneur at Glue. I just, as you other guys, I'm just work at Glue, do the kind of business development side. So Glue is a platform for remote working and remote meetings. And
As we
obviously
see.
there's a lot of remote work happening as we speak, and as we've now seen that there's people from different parts of the world. I'm in Helsinki, Finland, as we speak.
So, indeed, now we have already mentioned some aspects of how this is impacting the future, the future of collaboration. Now, if we take a second of step back, I was just curious to hear how this actually affected you and your company over the last month. So maybe, David, is anything really that felt like it changed over the last month?
For instance, in our case, as we are used to work with with flexibility, with that work-life balance, in instance internally. So we are very used to work like this, with collaborative tools and with people dispersed in different locations. So in that way, almost nothing has changed.
Okay.
And actually, in the way we are developing the projects and the way we are dealing with the clients, almost the same. The problem right now is that we are not allowed to travel, so sometimes that you cannot have that face-to-face meetings. Or sometimes your clients can come to your office maybe to experience one of the solutions that we can offer to them. But mainly internally, let me say that initially for us, nothing has changed, almost nothing.
Okay, and maybe also from other people like Andre, you also mentioned in that you have also supporting the XR base. Do you see a different kind of like response from the market or from maybe company that were actually investing and requesting for this VR application or projects?
Well, even with the companies that we've been working with on project base, like implementing, for instance, like digital twin for hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Even those projects were affected by the crisis because basically all the projects involved a lot of interaction with the customer on location, which is the subject of the project. And now we are not able to go there and talk to people, so we moved into that remote mode, and yeah, it definitely impacts the productivity and efficiency of the team.
Yeah, yeah. And do you guys have seen something instead from, let's say, the client side? How are they reacting? Because of course, there might be all the willingness and the strength for us to push forward and to take on this opportunity. But then what if the other side is not receptive at the moment? Because we have to imagine, right? Everybody's now busy with their own kids running around, trying to move companies that maybe were not suitable for working from home, right? And now you are
Yeah.
ending up in a very different situation. Those are personal factors that certainly have to be taken into account. Do you see any of that?
Well, I mean, it's a big shock, the current unfortunate situation where the world is, and it's gone quite fast as we spoke before the event began. So there's a lot of kind of adjustment that needs to happen for companies, because the fact is that there's suddenly a dire need for remote work with industries as well that are not used to remote work. For instance, in our industry, we work remotely quite a bit, so it haven't
Yeah.
been that huge of a change for us. But universally, if you look at the whole big picture, I think the like the acceleration of remote work has been a big factor in all of our life now.
And that's I think also like something that kind of like moves into stages, right? So what I've seen actually that there were some interesting articles that basically compared the way this is going to impact with the 5 stages of grief. I don't know if you ever heard about those stages, right? And let me maybe show you something. So those kind of like works more or less like this. So the 5 stages of grief works. It address basically, let's say, how do people energy behaves in time and like their happiness. How do they react? So and here you have, let's say, imagine here you have your happiness and your willingness to work and do stuff, and here instead you have the time, right? So how in time this changes. And usually, as indeed also David actually and others mentioned, there is an initial state of shock. After that, basically, the curve goes like this and then goes up. But what are actually in those? So the first thing is what many call basically a stage of, let me, denial. Right, so it's basically like here when people don't want to accept that, they feel like this is not happening, right? You mentioned also that in Spain people say no, Italy is that far away, right? It's not going to happen to us, and sadly things are moving in a way and a pace that we didn't expect. Then after that there is a stage that is basically frustration, where you actually see the thing are changing, right?
Yeah.
And after that you end up with basically, this is, damn it, things are really changing, and I am really here, I'm really depressed because I cannot do anything, and it's something that I have to deal with. Yet on the other hand, people, and I feel like in a way people that maybe are more aggressive, entrepreneurial, they end up then saying, okay, but then what am I going to do about it? Right? How am I going to adapt and try to make this as an opportunity? And that's where things we start experimenting and trying new things and try different things. And then there is a moment where you're like, okay, now I have experimented enough. I can then get over it and try to make something and try to move forward. Now, I was wondering if so. This is what is called basically the curve of Kubler-Ross applied to a business side of things. Where do you feel personally are you located kind of like right now? And I'm not necessarily talking about you as an a company, but more from a personal perspective. So maybe I can briefly, in my case, for example, I believe that I am more or less here. And the reason for this is because I was like, I just came back from Italy after the country was in lockdown. I said, hey, this is, I'm now coming back. What about now? I have to work from home. How is that going to work? Schools closed. And then I was like, damn it. Then I tried to get sorted, my kids walking around during a team meeting, standing in my lap. And that's the moment it's like, this is not going to work. And then I thought, hey, I got to try to find other ways to connect, try to find other ways to stay connected. And that's why that's this stage of experimentation. And I feel like it's going to be more something like this, where experiments are going to be up and then again until eventually there is going to be a moment, epiphany, where it says, yes, that's going to work. So that's kind of like mine. But what about yours? I'm curious. Where would you say are you now?
Well, basically, I can start, and as an individual, not like representing the company. So I would say that as the situation is as it is, just basically need to accept the situation and adapt to the situation and learn from the situation. So I would say that I'm basically here, like on the quite positive side, because you can't really do anything about it as an individual, but you need to make sure that you can kind of help and do your part as well as possible and
Yeah.
provide solutions.
And I think in your case, it also depends from the specific environment, right? This is a moment that for you is proving to be an opportunity. So it makes sense that people like you and people like belonging to your organization move further. I'm curious about others that maybe might be in a different state or the same.
Yeah, for
Let
instance,
me
sorry. Yeah.
let me try to share if the connection is good while I'm back. So I think that a lot of companies are right now definitely either in denial or in shock. But maybe
Yeah.
for our industry, it's quite special moment because we've been actually experiencing quite hard times for a while. And for us, we are definitely in the excitement and decision mode, I would say, because we understand the value of virtual spaces, of remote collaboration, and we know as an industry what it is possible to experience virtually uh, without necessity to travel anywhere. And definitely we see this situation that is very unfortunate, but we understand that it provides also an opportunity to change the habits, how we, for example, hold events. Even in normal life, when things get back to normal state, we might discover new opportunities that VR experts knew about for a while.
Yeah. So Alina, it really sounds like you're also in the experimenting, heavily experimental phase.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And David, you're also saying something.
Yeah, I think we are more or less, I'm more or less in that part, in that decision, making decisions towards the integration. We all lived, and personally, as a company with VirtualWare, the 2008 crisis. So, we have some kind of experience, or let's say this kind of situations. So personally, as a company, we move really quickly from the first stages, that, frustration and so, and the shock part, to the last part of the curve, let's say,
Yeah.
where you can really make the difference and take the opportunity that this kind of situation can give you personally, yes, to manage your work better at home with two kids, with the family, and your wife and your boss, working at the same time. How do you manage that time? Also, as a company, to reinvent yourselves and see how you can take advantage of these opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, and between wife and boss, I think it's a very tough challenge.
And kids. Don't forget about
and,
kids.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think at the end, no, it's too tough. I haven't certainly made that decision yet. I can tell you. Andre,
And where
what
are
about
you
what about?
yourself? Are you in Italy now or in
No,
Netherlands?
I'm in the Netherlands. I'm in the
Okay.
Netherlands. So my parents are there, so I hear always stories, and we all see what's happening. So yeah.
But your parents are in Italy.
Yes, they are in Rome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, for me, it depends on the area of the life. So in terms of family, I think we are bouncing between frustration and experimenting,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
this is kind of circle of interaction of iterations, because we experimented how we can have kids doing some classes over online, and while she's just 3.5 years old,
Yeah.
instead of just watching Netflix, right? And also, I think the main challenge is uncertainty, which was created like in unprecedented scale. I mean, no one saw that uncertain situation, at least in the last 20, 30 years. We went, being born in Soviet Union, I went, this is like sixth crisis in my life, and I got used to that. But magnitude of change that we're anticipating now
This
is
is yeah.
really unprecedented.
Yeah, and this indeed brings me also to the next question. The question is, I was wondering, how long do you think this would last? How when things will go back to normal? And let me just clarify. When I say back to normal, I mean that people will be able to go back to work and travel will gonna start back. Of course, it's gonna take much longer, based at least on what I feel, to get an economy that is back on its foot. But let's say to get back to normality, when we can finally work without our children jumping on our lap, or we can actually have business meeting or attending a conference. Now, maybe why don't we do this? Why don't everybody try to vote? So everybody adds a note, and then we put a number in there in months, and then we share it and say our basically logic behind it.
Can you repeat the question again? Because
Yeah. So how long it is gonna
I have
take
two
before
questions. Yeah.
things go back to normal? And with normal, I mean people will be able to travel again, and it will be possible to go back to our work, and not only for us, but also for the company that are in need of this VR, that are, let's say, the customer
I think
side of
it's a
things.
hard question as well, because like living in a global world, it depends a bit on the area and everything. So
Of course, yeah. That's in some places it's expected maybe to go back to normal like a bit earlier, but we can still maybe share some kind of like ballpark numbers that we feel could be representative. And anyway, it's an opinion. It's certainly not true. So I'll here is mine.
is that, David, yours? 3.6. I can go put it to the.
Okay, this is
'cause
mine.
So
this is
I
David.
have said,
Because with the VR, it's easier for me to put it. So.
Thanks, Kale.
No worries.
yeah.
So I might
So we
actually just
have
have a
here we
look
go.
at your
Can I help
opinions.
you?
This is
Okay.
David's.
I'm trying to navigate
Yeah.
that.
Okay, go back.
Yeah, I think it's a bit hard for the desktop computer user to.
Yeah, and
put
actually
those.
we have people that are some with our VR headset on a Quest, some people that Andre, are you on a Rift?
Yes, I'm on
S?
the Rift, and I'm sitting.
And this is Alina's. There you go.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I believe we miss one. We have one, two, three,
Yeah,
four.
I think I want to kind of listen your thoughts. I don't want to take any kind of should I say
Okay.
strong
That
opinion
was
here.
exactly the purpose of writing it down before we say things.
Yeah.
But okay, so me personally, I think 9 months. I mean, it's just a gamble, but I think before giving also how China is we have actually a colleague that is stuck in China, and then we see that right now, after 3 months, she's basically allowed to go out again. There have been very strict controls there. Um, so I also think that for us it might take us even longer. So I would say my guess would be 9 months. Then Andre, you say never. It's quite a bold statement.
Well, the never, I mean that in 90 days, people would develop new habits and the things never get back to the normal first. Second, this crisis creates a lot of opportunities to fix a lot of things in companies, in governments, and just share it with the crisis thing, but it's going definitely. We'll see definitely a lot of changes, and also we haven't seen that amount of people who remain, I would say, unemployed. I mean, doing nothing now. Yeah, right. In the hotel, in restaurant, and the businesses that affected with that in travel industry. But all the debts and account payable, they are accumulated over 6 months. So how are we going to solve this? Whether it be going to be inflation or it's just hard to predict. But I hope we in
Absolutely.
6 months get back at least to the offices or 6 to 9 months,
Yeah,
hopefully.
yeah. David.
Yeah, maybe on my side, I was really positive on this. Let's say,
Yeah.
coming back
Two to
to,
six
yeah, to,
months.
yes, actually, coming back to normality, let's say between commas, as, Andy said.
Yeah.
Yeah, put 2 months depending on where you are based. I mean, because, this kind of situation, came from China, then came to Europe, and now I'm entering, other parts of Europe, and then the US, Canada, and also, Mexico. And so, and maybe I guess some countries are going to start, before the countries, okay? So that's why I put, 2 months. Maybe we can come
Okay.
back to the office. We can come back to work. But let's say we are allowed to travel. Maybe it takes more months. But it's an uncertain situation. We live in a certainty right now, so it's difficult to figure out the number. But I would like to think in a positive way, and that's why I started with a 2 instead of started with a 6 and a 9 after.
So indeed,
Okay.
it's going to be certainly a gradual process. I totally agree, and there
Yeah.
Yeah.
might be a first steps where we are able to do something about it, and then afterwards, the full freedom of traveling and movement is going to certainly take quite longer, especially if we consider different regions, right?
Yeah.
Because some regions might be affected longer than
Yeah.
others. Carly, what do you want to share your opinion?
Yeah, well, it's as said, it's really hard to say. Obviously, the whole situation is still evolving quite a bit, and as mentioned, it's went kind of through different countries and different continents. So it's really hard to guess anything from my perspective. Hopefully, quite soon. So um, yeah, the sooner the better, obviously, because it's quite a big uncertain kind of
Turn.
situation globally.
Yeah, yeah. So, guys, I just have one more question that I wanted to ask, and that was like, from your personal perspective, what advice would you give to people that are in the XR industry right now? And this might be the small companies that were trying to maybe raise their first round of investments, or maybe companies that are being more established, like the one from David, like Virtualware. What kind of advice would you give to someone that wants to take the most and do its best to make the most indeed of this opportunity, and move towards the storm, in so to say?
From our perspective, as a company, it's really important, to measure your finance capability. Okay,
Yeah.
this is a temporary situation. This is not going to last. Let's say, hopefully, a lot. So you have to measure and to to think internally how you are going to or where you're going to focus your efforts. In terms of financing, and also it's time to keep pushing and pivot if you need to do that in the kind of your strategy, solution, and product in this case. But it's an uncertain situation, and I guess right now the finest part, keep the team together towards the same focus that you had before the, this crisis, let's say, environmental crisis. It's a very important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think the team is also something that it has to strongly get into the picture because it's about the finance. It's about how do you gonna move forward and get past this. But I think also get the team together, especially when maybe the people are not used to work and collaborate close to each other. That's also I think very important.
Yeah, I think.
Andre, yeah,
The,
Kalle, please.
yeah, Caleb, please.
Yeah, I was just saying that it obviously depends on the kind of the organization. How have they worked before? Have they been working remotely before this situation appeared? So basically, for companies that are suited for remote work and don't need the maybe the physical proximity of meeting clients face to face, it might not have as big of an impact than companies that need to have in lot of in close like physical relationship with companies and their clients. So I would say also similar as David to kind of focus on the most important asset, which is the personal. Obviously, the situation will go away eventually. So just kind of go through the hard times and then continue from there. There's certainly going to be like a change in the whole kind of world after this. Hopefully, a positive one, and we can learn from these kind of situations.
Yeah, yeah. Andre.
Well, first of all, this whole crisis is very beneficial for VR industry specifically, and in general, like traditional industries were affected more than tech so far, at least. Well, I would give an advice to startups
Yeah.
and who are in search of investment. So I wouldn't expect anyone closing the rounds in 3 to 6 months unless you dealing with specific topics of VR telepresence or somehow contribute to the to solving the situation because mainly of the uncertainty and you can't project. But still keep in mind your long-term goals first, and second, just keep pitching your startups to investors. And while you pitching those startups to investors, please include at least one or probably two slides about how does this COVID crisis affected your assumptions, your previous assumptions. Because in that case, you will at least show to investors that you are having your hands on the situation first, you're acknowledging the impacts of what's going on, and you're rethinking your business model. And you might not get the investments right now, but at least you show the intelligence of your team and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. These actually show a very good match because when you say when you look at your finance, you are able to keep running, and at the same time you still address the investors in a way that shows that you are prepared, that you have thought
Yeah.
about this, and because denying that this is like business as usual, it's gonna be, I think, one of the most fatal mistake.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot assume that things are gonna be like yesterday. They are not. They will. They might never not be the same, and not necessarily for the bad in a bad way, right? So I think that when you pitch your story, when you show, when you connect to people, show that your assumption on your customers have changed and how they have, I think shows a very good level of preparation.
Yeah.
Halina, hi, it's great to have you back. Why don't you move a bit forward so that you get also in it? Otherwise, you might be, yes, exactly, perfect.
Maybe I can come here. Okay.
Here.
Yeah.
So there was one last question that I asked all the gentlemen here, and that was like, if you would have an advice for a small XR company or an entrepreneur that is trying to make the most out of this difficult time, what would that be?
I would say try to be as careful as possible with introducing VR to other industries so it creates the best impression. for VR, because my biggest worry right now that we have the, I don't know, second wave of really high interest targeted towards VR. And right now, every single company, even without VR experience, will try to say that they are trying to do virtual conferencing. My worry is that we're going to see a lot of bad examples. I want XR and VR to show it to the world from the best possible side, because then everyone who is professional and who is involved in that is going to profit in the long term. But I'm just afraid that we will see some negative examples from not really professional people in VR that would scare larger audiences from this
Away.
technology. Yes.
Yeah. And I
So that's
think
my biggest issue.
that's absolutely a very good point. I mean, I think that it's on every entrepreneur's or on everyone's responsibility to invest in quality and really have his message straight when it's about approaching someone else, showing and explaining what are the capabilities and the limitations, and rely really on value and content instead of gimmicky solution that might look cool but then push away the clients. Because let's also be careful about it. Someone might try VR, and if the people that are using it are not gonna like it the first time, the chance that they are gonna try it again, it's so much lower, because people got kind of like scarred for the first time, and of course they're not gonna say, oh yeah, last time it was absolutely bad, it didn't do what we were supposed to do, and it's gonna be very hard for someone else to then try again with that same person. So I think it's on everybody's responsibility to really approach that in a very good way,
responsible
like
way.
with intent.
Responsible way.
I'm Gabriel. I'm
Responsible
sorry,
way.
but I need to jump out soon.
Yeah.
Just have another appointment working
Yep.
beginning quite soon. So please, you can continue, guys,
Yep.
and we can then be in contact offline after this
Absolutely.
to just go through
Absolutely.
the material and everything. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
thank you,
Yeah.
guys. Thank
Thank
you.
Guys.
you.
So yeah,
Thank you, Colin.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
thanks.
Bye bye.
Cheers.
So, guys, I think more or less we have got gone through the answer. Is there something that maybe like maybe one last thing I could mention? If you do, you have still a couple of minutes?
Yeah. Go.
Sure, sure.
The question was like, when is that you think that really, in this case, when we go back to the collaboration aspect of things, when is that you think really that remote collaboration platform adds value? Because let's be clear, right? There are also a lot of platforms from Zoom, Skype, and many others that offer remote collaboration. And when is that indeed something like this you would say personally really adds the value and it's worth the investment in time and technology to dive into it?
Yeah, if you want, I can start.
Go, please.
Please.
For me, it's very clear. Today, earlier in Moscow, I participated in hybrid online event where we had a few people in the studio, and then other speakers joined us via Zoom. Those who joined using Zoom were they streamed their presentation, but they were not feeling present in one environment with other speakers.
Right.
Even though right now I'm using PC, my MacBook, so I'm not virtually there, I still feel that I'm in the same environment with you guys. And this is absolutely different. So for me, this transition from flat Zoom type environment where you don't feel that you're connected, you feel isolated one-on-one with the camera, is very different from any kind of environment like this.
So connection. So it's the feeling of connection, what you're saying, basically. Yeah.
Yes.
I'll be back just in a second. Please.
David, what's your feeling about it?
I would say, when you add something different. For instance, if you can move freely in your space, So you are fully immersed in the situation. With remote collaboration, for instance, with companies, engineering teams or training teams that you can have both together, maybe reviewing a design of a new concept of something or training together, but you can move freely. I mean, when we talk about, Zoom, Skype, or, these kind of virtual events, you are physically not moving a lot. I mean, you are teletransporting. When you are that free movement, you add some kind of immersion that also helps you understand better the situation. You feel more, let's say, inside that situation and that environment. Okay, so I would say that when you add something different, right now with these platforms, okay, instead of seeing my physical face, that sometimes you can have that kind of, okay, I would prefer to see your face instead of seeing your avatar, to see if you are the real you, let's say that. But yeah, I would say that there are lots of different kind of virtual reality platforms for collaboration. I think that if you have that free movement, you can really have a good difference between all of them.
And Andre, what's your?
Well, I spent 8 years working in remote in different situations. I also spent like 3 last years traveling across different countries and conferences. And I would say that nothing can replace the live interaction, especially the first meeting with the person. But after that, you can easily to transfer in that virtual space and have meaningful conversation with someone who is not present, and without spending hours or even days to travel across ocean or countries. And then VR itself and collaboration in VR creates the very natural actual interface to the conversation, because speaking on Skype or Zoom, you still need to switch. It's very
Artificial?
no, it's not artificial. It's just either black or white. You're either speaking or you're listening. And also the feedback that you can provide, you either raise your hand or you lower your hand, and this is and this is your participation actually in conversation, instead of except the words you're saying. While in general, the transfer of information include, like, you transfer with words only 8, probably 15% of the information of the message, and the rest people are getting from your non-verbal cues. And VR is actually just a
Much better,
natural, yeah, it's transferring the natural body language. We're still not perfect yet, but I
But
see
I've
you
also
can reply with so many gestures.
Yeah, and I also have to be one objection of this is like, yeah, but with camera you can do it. It is true, but it's also true that very often people just don't switch on their camera, right? I mean, it happens so often that people like
Yes.
maybe they don't feel comfortable about the background. That's okay,
Yeah.
or maybe they just have a bad camera, or maybe sometimes it's also not working. I mean, there are many reasons, and that's the point where I'm like, well, if I cannot see anybody anyway, then I'd rather go with an avatar that can show. It can say,
Yes.
yes, sure, please go
Correct.
on first. You can
Yeah.
go and add that layer of communication that is typical of
Yeah.
gestures and body language. Of course, as you said, we are not there yet. We don't have a facial expression, eye tracking yet. It's certainly coming at some point. But still, if I have to choose between this and no webcam, I would rather go for this 100 times.
Yeah.
There you have, Gabriel, the value, exactly what you've said. So, and actually, if we are talking now, there are lots of events that are being cancelled. This is a good way to keep everybody together that cannot attend to those events. And actually, most of the organizations that are starting to look for different kind of platforms to host those events in virtual reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And
definitely, it adds value.
And Alina mentioned her panel. I was actually attending the panel, so we're meeting next the second time today. And now I feel that we share the place, while before it was like, okay, I'm observing what I was speaking from the space. And even though she's joining us from Alina's joining us from the
desktop.
MacBook, yeah, from the desktop, but we still can see her present here.
Yeah.
And this is kind of equal feeling for us, that we share this place and we are on the same page in terms of conversation. I don't know how it feels for you, Alina. And David, are you also on the desktop, right?
Yes, I'm also on the desktop, and
Yeah.
yeah, I would like to have my headset, but I think it's a good experience also in the desktop.
Yeah, yeah.
Say it
And I
again.
think it's also important. Please, David, you can say it again.
Yeah,
The
it's a
last
good
sentence.
experience
A good experience.
also
Yeah.
in the desktop.
Yeah.
And I think it also that it's going to be crucial, especially to get more people in to have this desktop support, because it happens that many of these apps, they instead go for like the full VR experience, while instead having that, it's going to help to spread, to get more, let's say, acceptance from the
Yeah.
public. So of course, Quest is going to be one. Of course, it's key. Many people have it. It's easier to go into it. Of course, the high-end headset, absolutely. But the moment that you have people that can also join, they are gonna maybe then next time think differently and say, hey, maybe I can try one,
Yeah.
and it's gonna open doors and get for mass adoption. It's not gonna be happen next week, next month, but I think that this and the whole situation is gonna certainly give a boost in the
Yes.
upcoming months.
Yeah. For
Absolutely.
sure.
I agree.